Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the Secure360 conference. Today's webinar is Information Security Isn't About Information or Security. My name is Tyler Behrens, and I'm your moderator for today's presentation. During the webinar, you may submit questions for your presenter at any time using the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Now, please welcome Evan Francen.
Thanks, Tyler. It's good to see well, I guess I'm not seeing anybody, but it's good to be here. Good morning. COVID's kind of got us all in different places everywhere. I'm showing my screen or my video, so hopefully it doesn't scare any of you. I'm like the information security chia pet with the long beard and all that, but now you get to see me. So yeah, information security isn't about information or security. I'll get to what that actually means when I say that. Normally that gets people's attention a little bit. Really what it comes down to, and I'll just kind of reveal it a little bit now, it's about people. And so, there are certain things we do to be more effective with how we manage information security with people. There's certainly things, in our industry that we've seen over and over again that we get wrong. So we're going to cover all that stuff. It should be a good spend of your time. And then we have some things at the end. I think if you're going to spend an hour with somebody, on a webinar, you should get something for it. So you should have some takeaways, some things that you can do and apply, at your own organization. So those things will be here too. So my agenda, simple, 3 parts. The first part is housekeeping. I have 5 slides there where I'm going to go through just some background about me, background about just things, really laying out the rest of the presentation. Then I have a lot of slides. This is the meat of what I'm going to talk about, and then we'll wrap it up with some action stuff. A lot of slides, but I do go pretty fast. Hopefully, I think these things are recorded, so if you ever needed to go back, I'll also make my slides available to anybody who wants to look at them later. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a security guy. I don't like to talk too much about me, but I've been doing security for a long time. Started FR Secure in 2008. It's grown quite a bit, which is really cool. It's cool to be part of it all. I think we've grown the right way, where we've really maintained our culture. 80 employees-ish today, about 1,200 clients. We have this crazy mission. The mission is to fix a broken industry, so this information security industry. And the way we do that is we ask ourselves, everything that we do, are we contributing to the fix or are we contributing to the problem? It keeps us honest. It makes us, stay product agnostic. So if I tell you your firewall sucks, I'm not trying to sell you one. It really probably sucks. Things like that. So we're known for telling the truth, which sometimes also gets us in trouble. But that's what it takes, I think, to really work on making our industry better. We founded SecurityStudio in 2017, and what we did was we took, I think, our most well-known thing that we've always done, which is information security risk assessments, and we put them on a platform and made them available to everybody, including our competitors. It was kind of funky when we did that because I think a lot of people at FR Secure felt threatened by that. But what we realized is 80–90% of organizations in our industry still don't do the fundamentals. They don't do the basics with information security. So we ended up not losing any business. And I think what we did was helped other people get more business. There's plenty of business. There's plenty of things to work on in our industry. So feeling threatened by competition should never be something that anybody really feels. Anyway, that's what SecurityStudio is. It's just a software as a service company where we make our tools available to others. A lot of CISO stuff. The mentor program, we're in our 12th year right now. I think we're in class 8. We started with 6 students in 2010. It's always been free. One of the things that allegedly is broken in our industry is we don't have enough talent. So the CISSP mentor program, we started in 2010, 6 students. This year we had 1,444 students sign up, which is really, really cool. It's free, right? There's no strings attached. One of the things in society in general is when people are told that something's free, they always think, well, what's the catch? So it makes our job, I think, when we really are doing things for free, I think it makes our job more difficult. But it's really cool. It's awesome to help people. It's always open to everybody. We live streaming it this year. We also record it. So if you ever want to go back and find the recordings, so if you're studying for the CISSP, or you know somebody who's interested in the CISSP, or just somebody who wants to know more about security, send them to the mentor program. It doesn't cost anything. High profile public breachy things. People love those stories. Done some of that, done quite a bit of that. If you're in the industry long enough, I think you sort of end up there at some point. Talk a lot and I write a lot. So that's me. I do look better as a cartoon. I don't know though. The beard's looking good. Better than it was then, maybe. I don't know. You can be the judge. Wrote a book last year. I give away more books than I sell books, which is cool too, because I like giving stuff away. The book is about what I think, based on the experiences over the years, the things that I think are broken in our industry and the things I think we can do to fix it. I don't like leaving people with these are all the bad things, bad, and then just walk away and leave you hanging. Not only do we need to show the truth about our industry, but we also need to give solutions, ideas anyway, that we can talk about. And that's really what this book is about on security. It's about 10 things that I think are broken in our industry, 10 big things, and stuff I think we can do to fix it. This is Serge. He's my Russian friend. If you're in security, you should get a Russian friend, just a tip. And you should also have a Chinese friend. That's Leslie. Actually, two really, really awesome people that I've grown to love over the years, both Serge and Leslie. That was my attempt at humor. When you have people in front of you and you're not talking to a screen, you can hear them laugh. And if they don't laugh, you kind of pause and wait for them to laugh, or then just tell them, please laugh. When you're doing a webinar, I don't know if any of you guys are laughing or not. One more housekeeping thing, and this is, I made a promise a couple of years ago. You can see Robbie in the top right of your screen. Robbie Bragg, 25 years old, just a great kid, had a lot of potential. He took his life a couple of years ago. And so this is a mental health thing that I just promised to sort of give in every talk I've given. Since then, I've given probably 35, 40 talks. And I always bring this up. And I bring this up because the statistics show that some of you might be dealing, some of you listening right now might be dealing with a mental health issue. And there's a stigma around mental health. People don't talk about it for whatever reason. And it's all crap, man. People do struggle with things, especially now with COVID and everything going on, the isolation, the uncertainty, all that stuff that comes with it, creates anxiety, depression, all kinds of stuff. So this is to bring that out, to know that there are people who care and that you can get help. So Mental Health Hackers is a great organization. You can go check them out. But you can see the statistics just like I can. 800,000 people die every year due to suicide. 5% of adults experience a mental health illness in any one given year. About half experience mental health illness or mental illness during their lifetime. And the saddest part about it, I think, of these stats is only 41% of people actually get help about it, for it. So they struggle alone bad. And, this is in tribute to Robbie. So here's just a quick CTF. People like CTFs. It's just what we call a monoalphabetic substitution cipher, which means it's just substitute a letter with one alphabet and you'll get what this says. This is a poem that Robbie wrote. If you solve it and email me, you can see my email address in the bottom right. I'll give you a book. I'll sign it and give it to you. I don't know if they're still doing mail. I think they are, but I'll get it out to you. Anyway, that's housekeeping. Now onto our topic. Information security isn't about information or security as much as it is about people. It's always about people. And there's two big reasons why this always holds true. It will always hold true. The first is if people didn't suffer, then nobody would care. or they shouldn't care. But people do suffer when we get information security wrong, when things go wrong, when we misspend information security dollars, we take away from the mission of the organization. There's all sorts of things around people suffering because maybe we don't get security right or things go wrong. And you feel this weight if you are an information security leader or you're somebody who makes information security decisions. It's my hope that you feel the weight sometimes of your decisions. I've seen many organizations who accept risk on really by proxy or on behalf of their customers. And I wonder how many of them, if they took that same risk assessment or whatever risk it is and took that to the actual people, the customers, if they would feel the same way. At the end of the day, those are the people who suffer. If you take a healthcare organization, just as an example, we do our risk assessments on a scale of 300 to 850 because it's a language that many people understand. We've had times when you go to a healthcare organization and say you've got an information security risk assessment score or an S2 score of 500, and they'll be okay with that. And it's like, well, I wonder if you took that same assessment, that same score of 500, and if you asked the next 5 people that come in the front door if they would feel the same way. That's the weight. I think when I make information security risk decisions, and hopefully many of you do, kind of think of it that way. People suffering anyway, and you won't be able to end suffering, right? This isn't about risk elimination. It's never been about risk elimination. It's about risk management. So getting it to a certain level where you feel more comfortable living with it. And then the second point is people are the greatest risk. And this leads to, over the years, we've called people stupid, we've called people ignorant, and ignorance is probably okay. And that's not the approach, right? People are always going to be the biggest risk, but it's motivating them. It's getting them to participate with us on information security. It's speaking a language that they'll understand. I don't think there are many people who purposefully do bad things in our workforce anyway, or in our workplace. A lot of times they don't know any better. They don't have the right habits. People are certainly creatures of habit. So if you can teach them or help them to form the right habits, they'll do better things. We can leverage that to protect the organization. So those are the two things that really we're going to dig into more, is people suffering, and then people are the greatest risk. Just maybe different approaches that we can take to address that people risk. I know many of us do training and awareness programs, and some of us are probably tired of the traditional approach to training and awareness because of its maybe limited effectiveness, or it's boring, whatever. There's other ways, and so we're going to get into all that stuff. So point one, people suffering. If people didn't suffer, nobody would care. I mean, I think I wouldn't care, but people do suffer, and that's why we do care. That's why we have so many privacy laws and privacy initiatives. And yeah, I'm not going to get into privacy so much, as privacy fits within security. But anyway, so here's just some stats. You've seen stats. Most of the stats, many of the stats you read in our industry are biased, meaning the study was put on by somebody who has another motive behind it. But there are some good numbers, some good data in our industry. Hopefully when you're reading stats yourself, you're reading it with some discernment. Look at who sponsored this study. Look at how many people were studied in the study. They'll give you a good indication of sample error rate and things like that. But anyway, here are some stats. So 1 out of 10 adults, so 10%, fall victim to fraud every year. Sadly, most people don't report it, so we don't really know if that number is even close to being accurate. It is up 34% from 2018, and this is according to the FTC. IC3, if you don't know who IC3 is, that's the FBI. It's their complaint center, basically. They received 467,000 complaints in 2019, an average of 1,300 a day. They're overloaded. Most of those they can't investigate, and what they're looking for typically is some pattern that maybe they can go after a single source that's affecting multiple people. 1,300 a day, $3.5 billion in losses, which doesn't seem all that significant when you think of, there have been some studies, $1.5–2 trillion has been lost, or in criminal enterprise through, maybe online or hacking, whatever. Expected to grow to $6 trillion. So that number is getting worse, and it's getting bigger. 68,013 complaints, victims over 60. That's our elderly population. $835 million in adjusted losses. And those are people, sadly, who have fixed incomes. So it's very difficult for them to recover. And there's also, sadly, stories of, victims in that age group who have lost their entire life savings and, have taken their own life there too, because of the helplessness or the embarrassment that comes with it. So these things go deeper than just dollars. So cybercrime generated at least $1.5 trillion in revenue. That's wealth transfer. So it's wealth transfer from legitimate enterprise, things like you and I do, to an illicit, a criminal enterprise, $1.5 trillion. 82% of Americans surveyed say they worry about online security. Now, the thing about worry, if left unchecked, I think leads to other things like anxiety and other stuff. And I only usually worry about things that I don't understand. If I understand something well and I still participate in whatever activity that leads to something, if I understand it well, I worry less. So I wonder how much of the 82% of Americans who say they worry about online security worry because they don't understand it. Something to keep in mind. Building off that point, and I'll move a little faster, 27% of victims estimated that the incident ended up costing them $100,000 to $10,000 or more. That's a big range. I'm not sure how helpful that is, other than it does cost people money. Every 2 seconds, there's a new victim of identity theft. And identity theft, that whole system, I'm not going to go into that here, but that whole system is broken. At some point, we're going to have to fix that. Probably not now, but later. Criminals reportedly take over $36 billion each year from Americans aged 60 or older, building off of the last slide. 10% of cybercrimes, only 10% of cybercrimes are reported each year. And IoT devices, big explosion in IoT at home and in the enterprise. An IoT device that's just set up and connected, probably not behind a firewall, within 5 minutes, it's being attacked. And 66% of homes, 2/3 of homes, have multiple IoT devices. IoT devices, for people who don't know what those are, smart home devices, your Arlo camera, your Alexa, Google Home, all those things are IoT. Now you can't buy dumb TVs. Every TV you buy is a smart TV. You can disable a lot of that stuff and and block that traffic, but sadly, you're not even getting a choice as a consumer on a lot of IoT things. So anyway, that was point one. So I think if it wasn't already obvious before we even started into this part of the into that part of the presentation, we already know that people suffer. Hopefully that puts a little more context to it. Another I think, tip from over the years, I think one of the easiest ways to identify somebody who struggles in information security, even in our industries, people who are CISOs and people who are managers in information security, is their inability to put risk into context. So when you look at all the things that you're responsible for with information security, where does this risk fit with everything else, right? Hopefully those, the point one, what we covered, hopefully that helps to put this people part of risk maybe a little bit more into context, at least how it affects people at home. So people are the greatest risk, and we've seen many of these studies before. You've lived through it. You've been frustrated by it. You've been affected by it. 83% of Americans use weak passwords. That's no surprise to anybody. Everybody hates passwords. The normal people, I call them normal people. In our industry, there's about 1 million now, I think, practitioners, people who do information security for a living. And there's 330 million Americans. So I say it's us and then normal people. So the normal people aren't the only ones who struggle with passwords, right? We all struggle with passwords. 83% of Americans use weak ones. 66, 2/3 of Americans reuse passwords for online banking, email, social media, so on and so forth. The average American has, believe it or not, 7 social media accounts. 43% of Americans have a shared password. 22% use their own name as a password. 75% have trouble keeping track of passwords. Less than half, 45%, change their password even after you've been notified that somebody else has it. So those are all troubling things. And if you think, how people work, I don't think people do this stuff on purpose. I can't imagine that a person would purposefully put themselves and their family at risk, to put their money at risk, their privacy at risk, all these things at risk on purpose, right? I don't think they understand. A lot of times we don't understand risk in context, what it really means to me. Otherwise, we would do things maybe differently. And it's not just telling them, and we'll get to the fix of these things, I think. It's not just telling them, hey, you need to change passwords all the time. They've heard that. They know that. It's motivating them. It's creating an atmosphere. It's creating a culture where they're motivated to do these things, not because I'm telling you to, not because I benefit as an organization, but because you benefit as a person. Your family benefits, your children benefit. And I think that's really the place we need to go. And we'll get into how we're going to do that. So more things about people being the greatest risk. 90% of data breaches are caused by human error. That's not a surprise. Technology is easy, right? It's binary. It's discrete. It's on or off, 1 or 0. Technology only does what we tell it to do, whereas humans do what they want to do. So that's not a surprise. Gartner estimates 95% of cloud breaches occur due to human errors. 4,856 PDB is a personal data breach, reported to the ICO, which is over in England, between January. Yeah, that's the first month is January. And the first half of this last year, 60% were human error. You can see some of the attributions below that. So people are the biggest risk. I think most people won't deny that. So what are we going to do about it? So if we do agree on these 2 points, let's point out some things that we do today that I think are the wrong approaches, and then talk about what it may be a good approach, at least an idea that maybe you could take home or take to the office to make it better. So we're gooder. Gooder's my word. I'm an author. You saw that. I wrote a book. So when you do that, little known fact, when you write a book, you get to choose your own words. You get to make up words. So I made up the word gooder. Gooder, I think, at getting things wrong. So let's talk about what not to do. So first thing is don't treat information security like it's an IT issue. And this has been a buzzword, a buzz phrase in our industry for a long time. What does that mean? Well, it means a lot of things, but this is sort of what we do. Technology is digital, people are analog. I talked a little bit about that already. Analog meaning they're on a wavelength, right? You never really know where people are at. You never really know what's going on in their minds. You never really know what they're struggling with at home. You never know if they're struggling with their own mental health issues, if they're having financial difficulties, whatever, chemical dependency, all kinds of things that people deal with that are so variable and so much along a wavelength, it's very non-discrete. And I think that's one of the things that makes it really, really difficult for us to get our hands around it. And again, it's not like we're trying to eliminate risk, because the only way we could do that then would be to eliminate people. We have to manage it. So we have to first understand it and then do things to bring it more in line with what we kind of deem to be acceptable with people. So these are things, just news events in the last year. And it's interesting that even though this is a buzzword we've used over and over again, these things still make headlines. So cybersecurity is not, if you look at the CIO magazine on May 1st, cybersecurity is not just IT's problem. That shouldn't be a news flash to anybody. July 29th, not just IT's problem anymore, like it ever was. And that's from Deloitte. Harvard Business Review. Harvard people are really smart. Why cybersecurity isn't only a tech problem, which is a good episode of their podcast there from December. Listen, so these things, we already know these things, and none of these things, even though these things still make news, I wonder how many people read these these headlines and say, yeah, no, I know that. Or if this is really news to some people. It's hard to gauge. Hopefully it's more of the former and less the latter. So number one, don't treat it like it's an IT issue. And I'll show you how, I think you can do that better. Number two, don't try to fix people with technology. You can't fix people. You can supplement people. You can reduce risk to some extent with people. But if you're reducing risk in something that you don't understand the risk to begin with, it's very difficult to quantify what that actually means. So fixing people with technology, and these are some of the things I thought that were sort of funny. It would have been funnier probably in person. Tech support, we can't fix stupid. I know that in my own career over the last 28 years, I have called people stupid, and it's wrong to do that because they're not stupid. They just do things differently. They're looking at things differently. They have other things on their mind. I have security on my mind, so if they're not doing the things that I think that they should be doing, maybe I'll think that they're stupid. Clicking forgot password, whatever, and scanning your laptop, that's not the right way to do it, I don't think. Anyway, so fixing people with technology, there are things that you can do to supplement. You can compensate for some risk. So it's not like we take away technology, or we just maybe emphasize, and I don't even think de-emphasize technology as much as we emphasize people more in the entire equation. This is another thing that we do. We continue to add more stuff. We add more technology. We add more things. If you take a look at, just at home, we add more IoT devices. We add more, gadgets. We add more iPads, iPhones, Android devices, laptops, you name it, right? The next new thing comes out, we put it in somewhere. We continue to add more applications than we've ever added before, and that just keeps getting, that problem continues to get more and more. We did a study about a year ago, and we asked 1,000 normal people. So these were people that we vetted out the people who have information security experience early on in the study, and we asked the normal people, how do they view us? How do they view things in information security? And this was a common theme throughout. They're all confused. Not all, but large percentage were confused. They look at us like we're sort of, just throwing darts blindly. They don't trust us as much as we'd like. And so all those things sort of lead to this, and you probably do it at home yourself, or I know I do. If there's something that's really complex to me, and I feel like somebody else can take care of the problem or whatever, risk ignorance comes into play, where I'll just ignore the problem and hope that it goes away, or hope that it manages itself. And that's sort of the behavior that comes from a lot of this stuff. We also learned that complexity compounds the problem. And if you've heard of Bruce Schneier, one of the things he said in the 90s, which I thought I've always still used, I think it's a great mantra, is complexity is the enemy. The more complex you make anything, the more difficult it is to secure. The more complex you make a person's life, the more difficult it is to secure. The more complex you make a home network, the more difficult it is to secure. The more complex you make your work network. All these things make it more difficult for us to secure, more things that we need to put in place, more practices that we need to adopt. So complexity is always the enemy. So when you look at the things you can do to make security better, simplification is one of the best places to start. What things can I simplify? The good thing about simplification too is there's somewhat of a translation to efficiency. So if I make something simple, for instance, a 20-step process into a 3-step process, it's easier to secure, but it also potentially drives business because it's more efficient. So complexity is always the enemy. And this is what, thankfully, this is what people told us too, because it's in line with, I think, what we already believe. So to make matters worse today, so COVID and all these things that we're doing, we exacerbated, things become harder because we've pushed everybody home really quickly. Prior to COVID, about 15%, according to one study, about 15% of users worked from home. That number has increased to 49%. So 49, we've got 34% of people that have never really worked from home before that are now working from home. Different environment, isolation, all kinds of things going on in their minds and things that we need to account for. And that's just, if you've seen the headlines, you live in it, right? You're living it just like I am. Everybody, sort of working from home. Security, but even though we tried to think of security at the forefront, really what was at the forefront was getting connectivity, getting business working, and then security. In some instances, security was kind of built in or baked in, earlier on, but most of the SMB market, I'd say 10 to maybe 1,000 employees, the rush was getting the business up and running again, and security came afterwards. So you tack on kind of security things. In the first 2 weeks of, I would say, March 16th, 15th, 16th, for those first 2 weeks to the end of March, there were many breaches happening through home networks. It's somewhat subsided a little bit. All right, so speaking of working remote, this is another thing we don't want to do. This was a sad kind of research finding in a March survey. So last month, HR execs were surveyed by Gartner, and 76% said the top employee complaint during the pandemic has been concerns from managers about productivity and engagement of their teams when remote. And what I read into that is managers don't trust that employees are actually getting their work done, or they're not getting their work done when working from home. So if you compound kind of all these things together, and then you add on top of it this culture that, maybe your manager doesn't trust you, I don't think people are going to be really motivated to give a rat really about protecting the organization, other than how it affects me, maybe keeping my job, things like that. Personalization becomes kind of a big motivator, but this isn't a motivating statistic for anybody. So I think we made the problem worse still in all of the movement with COVID and everything else. Yeah, so if you've been in this industry long enough, you've heard many of these things over and over again, and it sort of feels like Groundhog Day when you say, treat information security like it's a business issue, like it's a people issue, less like it's an IT issue. A lot of these things you've heard before, yet we're still find ourselves sort of in this funky place. So to me, anyway, it seems a little bit, like Bill Murray there. All right, so what do we do? What can we do better? So 950,000, I mentioned before, 950,000 of us, 325,000, I call them normal people. And the reason why I call them normal people is it keeps me honest and recognizing the fact that I speak a different language than they do. So when I talk to the normal people who aren't in our industry about information security stuff, they don't get it a lot. And it's not because they're dumb, it's because I'm not speaking the language that they understand. A lot of times if I'm talking to an accountant or a CFO and they're digging in on financials, I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. So it's not like one is better than the other or dumber or anything like that. It's how do I get my language to resonate with them and their language to resonate with me so that we can sort of meet each other somewhere. And it's just an observation, but it's a realization and something that I need to keep myself. I think we could all use it. Keep ourselves, honest in this. That people don't just get what you're saying. Don't assume that they understand what you're saying. Don't assume that they just know why they have to change passwords all the time. take the time to explain to them why we have to change passwords all the time, why it's important to create long, strong passwords. Don't just assume they know. So motivate them by helping them instead of helping us. What can I do to help you? Can I be more of a servant? That's a bad word for some people. But can I serve our population better by doing security things kind of from that motivation? Listen to what they're saying. I've fallen for this so many times in my own experience where I've spent a lot of time telling people what they think as opposed to asking them what they think. And I've still catch myself occasionally today, listening to what they think. So a lot less FUD. Man, people have become totally desensitized now. If you remember breaches, breach news would come out 10 years ago and people would be all up in arms and just like, oh, I can't believe it. Nowadays, everybody's got breach fatigue and now it's kind of morphed into breach ignorance. I don't think many people care about a lot of the breaches that we're reading unless they can feel the pain themselves. Then it's a little different. But we've oversold FUD. I don't think, we've, it hurts our trust with people. So don't use FUD unless you have to. But use the truth, right? Different. So this is, another thing from that survey, another thing that we learned. We asked all the questions that we asked in the survey, and it was 1,000. So if you're a math person, that gives you a sample error rate, or I guess an error rate of maybe 3.5%, 4%. So it's pretty indicative of what the population feels like, the normal people. We asked them a bunch of true-false questions, binary questions, and we only had one open-ended question. And that open-ended question in that study was, what's one thing that we can do as information security people to make your life better? So it was really coming from what can we do to help you be better? And so this is a word map from that. It's just a raw word map. There's no massaging of the data. And this is what, sort of came out. So you can see the number one word here is simple, which is great because that goes along with what we already believe, which is complexity is the enemy. So they want us to make things simple for them. Simple and easy are two different words. They're not the same. So don't think that simple means easy. Simple just means easier to understand, less steps, less complexity. So simple and easy are not synonymous, but that's what we were told. Make it more simple, make it easier for me to understand. These are also words that came out of the word map that I think are really important because they're all related to education. They do want to be educated. So the training and awareness programs that we're doing, maybe they're not simple, maybe they're not motivating. I don't know, every one of them is a little bit different, but they do want to be educated. They do want to understand. They do want to be better, at least based on what we heard. So it seems like we've tried simplification in some cases. I don't know if we've gone far enough to understand maybe the motivation, which is kind of the next piece. And we've tried education already. So, what else is missing? This is what I think is missing based on, training and awareness programs that we've done, that I've participated in, that I've, worked on over the years, is motivation. What's in it for me? That's what people want to know. What's in it for me? Protecting the organization, great. And I understand that would help me keep my job. When the economy was better just a few months ago, that was less of a motivator because people knew that they'd go find a job somewhere else anyway. Maybe that's more of a motivator now, I'm not sure. But motivation, keying in on what motivates me as an individual to build better habits, right? People are creatures of habits. I can't force people to build habits. People build habits because of one of two reasons, I think. One is the fear of something bad hurts enough. So maybe I would quit smoking if I was scared enough about getting cancer or heart disease or something else. Or the reward of if I do something, well, I'll feel better, I'll make more money, I'll be more successful, those kinds of things. So motivation is a really big key. So telling people how to protect the company is one thing. And we've tested this. The thing that I don't think most people really care as much, they've kind of gone numb to that So what about if we tell people how to protect themselves, how to protect their loved ones? And there's three things that then sort of emerge. It's security itself, it's privacy, which is a subset of security, and the last is safety. Safety is the one that really seems to hit home because people can relate to that. Most people know how to recover from, a financial loss. You just make more money, and rebuild that. Most people know how to recover, or at least I think privacy is kind of a nebulous thing for people, but they can sort of recover from that. You just change your lifestyle a little bit, whatever. The one thing, and I take this, sort of at home too, I can never really recover a child's innocence, right? If children are being preyed upon, which they are in numbers greater than ever, but all these things are related too, right? You can't separate information security, privacy, and safety anymore. Those three things are all integrated. They all play off of each other. So if I can create an environment where people can be motivated to protect themselves financially, their privacy, and their safety, and then if I can motivate them to do that, they'll build better habits. And those habits then I can leverage and use in my own organization. So these three motivators become a really big deal. The financial motivation, like I said, up and down, it depends. Reg E and banking, replaces your money if if it's lost or stolen. So financial motivation isn't as, for some people, I guess, if you have more money, it probably is a bigger motivator. So anyway, these things are things that we can tap into, to help people build better security habits. And those habits then, and the way habits work is some of them are almost involuntary. So like when I create passwords, I've been doing it for so long and I've been motivated to do it the way I do it for so long, it's almost involuntary. I create long passwords. It's just a habit. It's those same types of things that if we can start to instill in people, I think we all benefit a lot. So anyway, and I think it's a win-win, because if I teach you or help you to build better habits to protect your family, you win. As an organization, I can use those habits to do better or to have better security at home. So then I win. It's just a different approach. So here's the idea. That's the organization in the middle. Those are people working at home. You can see the little stick. They're not really stick figures. I don't know what they are, icons. But people are working at home. Now, what used to be pre-COVID, where you'd have, a subset of 15% of people were working from home. Those were very controlled, right? You knew who those 15% were in many cases. They had a work need for it. They were probably used to working from home because they'd done it in other companies. It was easier to secure those people. And then when you blew up from 15 to 49%, a lot of people aren't used to it. And now you've got people, kids working at home or kids at home because, schooling from home and all that stuff. So things have changed a lot. What we used to account for information security when we did risk assessments was primarily the organization and some of the things about, telework or remote working. We'd ask things about VPNs and endpoint protection, stuff like that. Now things have changed so much that the dynamic is now more about remote and less emphasis sort of at the the corporate network. Anyway, so here's the message. So starting the message off right is really important. Culture becomes really important. If people want to play your game with you, if you think of security as a game, right? If everybody played by the rules, then security would be a lot better. Start sort of thinking it that way. If you want people to play the game with you, you have to start your message off correctly. This isn't about me being authoritative, me trying to be a hard ass, me trying to do anything else other than I want to protect you. And I want to protect you at home because I care about you at home. I care about your family at home. And being genuine about it, if you truly feel that way, that makes it all that much better. So this is the message. We care about the safety and well-being of you and your loved ones, period, right? There's no other motive. There might be some sub-motive, but truly that's the primary motive here, is I care about you, I care about your family, I want you to do better. It would really bother me to find out that something happened bad. So your financial well-being, privacy, and safety are important to us. This is the message. We offer this tool. It's free, right? And really what the tool is And we've got it, and it's free, and it's always going to be free. I'm not here to sell you anything. The S2Me tool that we use is free. It's always going to be free. But we offer this tool. It's just an information security risk assessment with a little bit of gamification in it that provides a dashboard that you can manage information security for your home or for yourself. So give that to all your or create one. Who cares? Give it to all your employees. It's just things. What people, the checklists and the things that you see, it becomes very prevalent. Best practices for securing home workers and all these checklists and things that came out. We've seen all those before, and I think people are somewhat numb to those as well. And there's usually a motive behind it. So if you look at Kaspersky's, I was just looking at it yesterday, Kaspersky's top tips for securing the home workplace. Number one, use antivirus. Well, it's Kaspersky. So yeah, that would be number one. There's always that kind of bias behind a lot of these things, but give them this free tool, have them do their assessment, and it's theirs. You don't see results. The company doesn't see the results. The last thing you want is people answering the questionnaires or answering the assessment the way they think you want them to answer it versus the way it really is. So, you never see the results from a company perspective. Using the tool is not mandatory. People hate mandatory, but it's encouraged, right? I would assume that most of my employees care about their family. They want to protect their family. It's their responsibility. It's not mine. It's your responsibility to protect your family. So it's not mandatory, but you probably should. What have you got to lose? And this is really, really important. The corporation, the company cannot ever see the results. You've got issues. If you do that, one, you're not going to get good results. The results are going to be what people want you to hear versus what it really is, for one. And number two, you've got privacy issues. There are certain things that people will have in their tools that you probably don't want to see anyway, because there are certain things that really are more specific at home versus the workplace. But there's a lot of crossover in a lot of the other stuff. So it's really important for people to know that it's theirs and it's free. So we have companies who are offering this as a employee benefit, right? It's here, do it. And this is, sort of what comes from it. This is version 1. So version 1 still has the word FISA score in it, but this is the 10 topics, for information security. What's created is the same score mechanism, sort of, as your credit report. And you can see quickly where I should probably focus some of my time and effort. So it's simple. You got to make it simple, easy to understand, easy to follow. The motivation is there because the motivation should be to protect themselves and their family. But then how does the company leverage this? So there has to be some kind of tie back because the company needs to manage this risk, right? Understand it, manage it. So what the big company sees in the default sort of way things we set them up typically is the company sees that, one, that you used it, right? If you didn't, but there's no reprimanding, and you can turn that off if you wanted to, but the company can see if you used it or not. You'd want to measure, if you gave this tool to 1,000 employees and only 2 people used it, that tells you something versus 800 used it. So that's the reason why that data is important. The other thing that the company sees are averages. They see metadata. So they can make educated decisions on what they can do to help their employees protect their families better. That's always got to be the motivation that comes off to your employees. So if I see that 90% of all the people that are taking this assessment struggle with password management, well, maybe it would make sense for me as a company then to invest in a password manager tool and give it to our employees or something. That's just an example. If you see that many of your employees are struggling with incident response, that's one of the 10 topics. They don't know what to do if there's an incident, personally or professionally. That's something to train on, right, to reduce that risk. And then you should be able to see scores change over time based on the things that you provided them, and you'll leverage all these good habits at work. So we benefit from the insight, the employee behavior and knowledge, and these are more true employee behaviors. They're not employee behaviors that have been, biased all that much, other than the fact that it came from the company, but the fact that the company can't see the results should combat that somewhat. And they benefit by protecting what matters most to them, and that's certainly the people. You could add additional motivations. People like motivations, they like awards, they like games. That's another thing about the tool that is given to employees today. There is a gamification piece to it. It's funny how people will do just about anything for a badge or an achievement medal of some sort in a tool. So if you just put something like that in there, people do all kinds of weird stuff, but good stuff if you built it that way. So the bonus recognition for using the tool or some other means, for people, yeah, they like that. That's just an additional sort of thing that you can do. This is typically what an organization sees. So they see the trend over time. They see scores change. They can see the individual topic scores. So you can see just in the screenshot that's here, in that topic 7, which you can't see the words for it, the score is fair. Everything else looks fairly good, even an excellent in topic 6. So that's maybe where I would focus my training and awareness, would be on that topic to help them secure their families better, and I win too. So that's the approach. So the best way to secure the remote workforce, absolutely, is to address your most significant risk. That's always sort of what we should be primarily focused on, is what our most significant risk is, and in this case, people. So that was an hour. I said a lot, well, almost an hour. I said a lot of stuff. Whenever I attend a webinar, I always want something that I can at least look at or play with or use potentially. So this is what you can play with and use. These two tools are free. The S2Me will always be free. It's a consumer tool. Check it out. Take it. Take it yourself. It does require a registration, but we even give you instructions that if you don't want to register, you want to use dummy data, use dummy data. That's not the point. The reason why we collect data about people is because we want to be more interactive. We know that habits are formed over time. They're not formed a one and done. So for people that are more interested in building habits, that's why we collect registration data. We don't sell data, nothing like that. And you can go check the privacy policy if you want. S2 Team is the portal used by the company. The S2 Team we've made free for the next 90 days to try to help with these kind of things. If you know me, I'll probably make it free forever, because yeah, it's a problem we need to fix. So if you want to get a hold of us, get a hold of me, that's where you can find me. You can go take the tool yourself. And that's another thing too. There's a lot of us who think that we have all the answers. So you look at the S2Me and you're like, wow, we got all the answers. It's the best tool ever. That's crap, man. There's a lot of things in there that probably you would like to see different. So give us feedback. We want it to be as effective as possible. So if you're doing the S2Me and you're like, you know what, you didn't ask enough questions here, I didn't understand that, let us know. Those things are all really, really important if we're going to start getting more and more people using the S2Me tool. And we've got some big plays with it. I know the state that we have a couple of states that are interested in deploying S2Me to their, their citizens. That's all good stuff, because we want to help. So anyway, that's that. Good news. There is something for you to do, and seriously, thank you. It's good to be here virtually. I'll look less like a chia pet maybe next time you see me. Any questions or anything? Do I turn it back over to you now?
Yeah, thanks, Evan. Really good presentation. Definitely going to look into that tool myself. We do have a few questions, so if you don't mind, I'll read those off to you.
Yeah.
The first one goes back to a little earlier in your speech from David around people. So agree that people are the greatest risk. But what people? All people, just certain people? Shouldn't we be trying to identify which people pose the greatest risk and design our controls accordingly, and not necessarily apply them using a broad brush, one size fits all? Can we use both internally and externally sourced data to identify which people represent the greatest potential risk? That would enable us to better target our controls where they may be most needed and appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, different people groups have different risks. You would just inherently know that. I don't think there's good data around what types of people pose the most significant risks and where yet. I think a tool like this would help us. We do ask some demographic data at the beginning of the registration to try to help us sort of figure that out. Because we need to know in kind of an unbiased way, who are the most significant risks and where, so that we can focus the right resources on them. I think people risk assessments have been somewhat overlooked. So I don't think we have good data on that, but it certainly would make sense that different people groups have different risks.
Great, thanks, Evan. And you did get a few comments I put in your queue about the beard and the jokes earlier, so I sent those your way. Next question we got from Michael is, in my own effort to move away from one password for every online account, I've began to save my passwords in Safari. Is saving passwords in browsers a good idea?
Well, it's better than using the same password. So it's a risk management thing. It's better than some things and probably less better than other things. I prefer to use a password manager because I think password managers are more secure. But storing them in Safari is definitely better than using crappy passwords or not, writing them down or sharing them or using the same password everywhere. So there's risks involved because, if there's a vulnerability in Safari, you may suffer that and you may lose passwords from that. I'm not sure who Safari, it's an Apple product. I'm not sure where those things are saved or stored. I would certainly do some research for you if you wanted to, but it's better than nothing. But I like password managers better.
Okay, wonderful. Good question here from Steve. Suggestions on how to educate/protect older normal people?
That's a great question. My heart really goes out to those. I think what we're going to end up doing, if you look at the S2Me tool today, I think where it's going to evolve is we're going to end up creating a version for elderly people because they speak even a different language. A lot of us, like I didn't grow up with a smartphone. I was a payphone guy, and then a pager guy, and then a flip phone guy, and then eventually a smartphone guy. So I'm not really a digital native per se. I'm more of an immigrant, I guess, to the world. And it's even worse so for that elderly population. So it's even a different language within a language. So I think what we'll end up doing is probably creating an S2Me for elderly people. And I also think we'll end up creating eventually an S2 Teen, which will be for teenagers, because that's another language within a language too. So we have to spend more time with them and understand where they're coming from. We have to spend more time with them to understand what they think of all of this, and then try to find something that'll resonate with them.
Great, thanks again. I think that's really helpful. So the next one here is, what is the best way to secure IoT devices besides disabling them?
Yeah, see, you said the besides part. That would have been the best one. Turn them off. Yeah, and everybody's got different risk tolerance too. So I'm at home is the only place where I get away from all this. So I don't like IoT. I don't want IoT in my home. That's just how I am. But do research on the IoT device that you're looking at purchasing or putting into your home, and do that before you make the purchase. If you've already made the purchase, well, then do some research on, how do I change passwords? Are software updates available for this thing? Segmenting, which gets a little more technical for, the average normal person, but segmenting out IoT devices on your home network from all the rest of the systems, including your work stuff. There are a number of things that you can do to, I think, limit the damage of an IoT device compromise. But those would be the basics, change all default passwords. My God, that's the easiest way to get into just about anything. Do some research on, how this thing updates software, because every software, every bit of software ever made will have vulnerabilities and bugs in it. So how will you update and patch this thing? If the manufacturer doesn't offer those features, it's probably not a good IoT device. Look for maybe something, look for an alternative, and then segment that network. Those would be probably my top 3-4 things.
Great, those are good tips. So I think we are coming up to the end here. There are other questions, so I see you do have your contact information there. Send them that way. This was recorded, so the folks here can go back and look at some of the stuff that was in there. And I'll end with the last question. What beard products do you use?
So I change it up, man, because I want to keep it. Every time I like comb my beard, I lose it. If I lose a whisker, it's like losing a soldier. It's weird. So some days I will do nothing but tea tree oil. I'll just dampen the beard and put tea tree oil in it, which is kind of a leave-in conditioner. And then other days I will, shampoo it and condition it and then use beard oil. But I think for me, it's been helpful to kind of switch it up a little bit. The one thing you don't want is for it to start drying and breaking. So that's what I do.
Wonderful. Well, great session. Thanks again, Evan, for your time. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.